The first thing Olivia Langston saw wasn't her ex-husband's face. It was the reflection of herself. A flash of expensive heels, tailored coat, and eyes that hadn't looked human in years, staring back at her from an airport window. Then in the reflection behind her, two small girls ran toward a man holding a paper cup of hot chocolate. They leapt into his arms with the kind of laughter that makes time pause. That was when she saw him. Elijah Ford, her ex-husband, the man she'd left 6 years ago. And the girls, her daughters. Her breath caught like a plane stalling midair. For a long second, she didn't move. Travelers streamed past her, businessmen glued to phones, children dragging backpacks, flight attendants gliding like clockwork. But Olivia stood still, a polished ghost in a terminal built for departures. Elijah looked older, thinner. His hair was dusted with gray, his face carved with quiet fatigue. But his smile, gentle, patient, real, was unchanged. Leah clung to his neck, babbling something about a snowman. Ava, the taller one, rolled her eyes but leaned against his side anyway. Their mirrored faces were too familiar. She could see her own features written across their innocence, and they had no idea who she was. "Ms. Langston?" Her assistant's voice crackled from her earpiece. "Your jet is prepped for takeoff. Zurich in 9 hours, Davos panel at 11. Should I confirm with the Swiss delegation?" Olivia's lips parted, but no sound came out. Zurich, billion-dollar deals, cameras, all of it, suddenly meaningless. "Ms. Langston?" She pulled the earpiece out. The sound of the airport flooded in. Announcements, footsteps, a crying baby somewhere. Elijah was closer now, guiding the girls toward a gate across from hers. His gait was slower, stiffer. She noticed a slight tremor when he adjusted his scarf. A memory hit her uninvited. The first time he'd played piano for her, hands steady, filling a small Brooklyn apartment with sounds so beautiful it hurt to breathe. That man was still here, but fading. The gate attendant called, "Flight 237 to Salt Lake City now boarding." Salt Lake. That was where they lived, where she had once lived. Elijah handed the attendant their tickets, knelt to tie one of the girls' shoes, and said something that made both of them laugh. It was such a small thing, so ordinary, and it undid her. She reached for her phone, almost without thinking. There it was, his old number, still saved. Elijah Ford. She had never deleted it. 6 years of silence, and her thumb hovered over message. She typed, "It's me," then deleted it, then typed again, then stopped. The screen reflected her face, composed, flawless, unreachable. The image of a woman the world respected and feared. The woman who had survived everything by leaving first, but she couldn't make her thumb move. The intercom buzzed again. "Final boarding call for Flight 103 to Zurich." Her pilot, Mark, texted, "We're waiting, ma'am. Everything ready. Weather window closing in 20 minutes. She looked back across the gate. Elijah was handing Leah her stuffed toy, smiling through whatever fatigue shadowed his eyes. A slow realization sank through her ribs. She hadn't just missed birthdays and first days of school. She had missed the kind of everyday love that makes the world bearable. Then Elijah looked up and saw her. The years between them compressed into one unbearable second. He froze. She watched recognition pass over his face like a wave. Confusion, disbelief, and something else underneath it. Sadness, maybe, or resignation. He didn't come toward her. He didn't call out. He just nodded once, a small, cautious movement, as if acknowledging an old scar. Then he turned away. The gate doors closed behind him. For a moment, Olivia couldn't breathe. The space he left behind felt enormous. Her phone buzzed again, another message from her assistant. She ignored it. The Zurich gate agent was paging her name now. Still, she stood frozen in the middle of the terminal, staring at the empty space where Elijah and the girls had been. When she finally moved, it wasn't toward the gate. It was toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the runway. Snow began to fall, slow, soft, inevitable. She pressed her palm against the glass. The reflection staring back at her wasn't the CEO of Airs Aviation anymore. It was a woman who had lost something that no amount of money could replace. Her phone buzzed again. Last call for boarding. She opened the text thread with Elijah's old number one more time. The typing cursor blinked like a heartbeat. "I saw you today." Delete. You look well. Delete. Finally, she typed, I'm sorry, but she didn't send it. Instead, she stared at the word until the screen dimmed. Outside, her private jet rolled onto the runway. Inside, she turned away from it. Cancel the flight, she told her driver when she reached the curb. He blinked. Ma'am? Cancel it. Her voice was calm, but something underneath trembled. Take me to the nearest hotel. I'll call you in the morning. She climbed into the back seat, shutting the door before he could respond. The city blurred past her window. Neon, snow, the distant hum of engines. Her reflection in the glass looked human again, flawed, terrified. At the next stoplight, she pulled out her phone one last time. This time, her fingers didn't hesitate. When are you home, she typed. Send. The message marked delivered. For several minutes, nothing. Then, her phone buzzed. A single word appeared. When? Olivia exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. Olivia didn't sleep that night. She sat in the corner suite of a downtown hotel, wrapped in silence and the glow of the city bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere below, life went on. Horns, snowplows, conversations she couldn't hear. Her untouched glass of wine trembled each time a train passed beneath the street. She'd replayed that single word, when, 100 times since it appeared on her phone. No punctuation, no accusation. Just the question, raw and impossible. Now morning had arrived, pale and merciless. Her reflection in the mirror looked like someone trying to impersonate herself. Perfect hair, tailored shirt, but hollow behind the eyes. The woman who'd faced government boards and built an empire from air routes had no idea how to respond to a man who still signed his text with silence. By 9, she was already in her office at Aris Aviation's Austin headquarters. Cameron Reed was waiting there, impeccable as ever in a dark suit and the quiet competence that made her indispensable. You're early, Cameron said, setting a coffee on the desk. You haven't been sleeping again, have you? Define sleeping. That's a no, Cameron said, sliding a manila folder across the table. I did what you asked. Olivia hesitated. The folder might as well have been a live wire. She opened it slowly. Elijah Ford, age 42, occupation, music teacher. There were photos clipped to the top, one of him at a school auditorium, smiling faintly as a group of children played violins in mismatched harmony. Another of him pushing a grocery cart, his coat too thin for the Utah winter. The third, one she hadn't expected, was of Elijah sitting at a piano, a sheet of handwritten music in front of him, the girls leaning on either side of him, heads tilted toward the keys. Her throat tightened. You followed them? I did my job, Cameron said evenly. Public spaces only. Nothing invasive. Olivia ran her finger over the edge of the last photograph. What about him? Cameron hesitated, which was rare for her. You should read the report. The second page wasn't words, it was a doctor's letter. ALS. Diagnosed 8 months ago. Early stages. Her stomach dropped. No, she whispered. I triple-checked, Cameron said. He's still working, still taking care of the girls. But the progression is there. Muscle weakness, tremors. He hasn't told anyone outside a few close colleagues. Olivia leaned back in her chair, the leather sighing under her weight. The city beyond her glass office stretched wide and indifferent. Why didn't he tell me? Cameron's voice softened. Maybe because you didn't ask. The words landed harder than they should have. Silence filled the room for a long time. Olivia stared at the piano photo until the edges blurred. 6 years she had lived like the world owed her peace for her success. But the world had given her exactly what she'd asked for. Distance. What are you going to do? Cameron asked finally. Olivia didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at planes lined like silver promises on the runway far beyond the city skyline. I built this company so people could move faster, she said quietly. I think it's time I learned to stop. Cameron tilted her head. Meaning? I'm going to Utah. Cameron blinked. You? Alone? Yes. Do you want me to arrange press silence? I don't want anyone to know I'm gone, Olivia said. Not the board, not the media, no one. Say I'm in Zurich finalizing trade agreements if anyone asks. Cameron hesitated, then nodded. Understood. Olivia closed the folder and stood. And Cameron, Yes? Don't call it an investigation, she said. Call it a reckoning. By the time her private jet cut through Utah's clouds, the world below had turned into a watercolor of snow and shadows. Olivia sat by the window, reading the same two sentences from the doctor's note over and over until the words stopped making sense. When they landed, her driver waited with the kind of car no one noticed. Old, discreet, unbranded. The air outside bit into her lungs, crisp and clean. She hadn't felt cold like this in years. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. She pulled her gloves tighter. "Liberty Park. There's a clinic nearby." The man nodded, starting the engine. The city slid by. Small houses wrapped in white, strings of leftover Christmas lights still glowing faintly in daylight. It was a different kind of wealth here. Quiet, modest, earned in hours rather than headlines. When the car stopped in front of the clinic, Olivia's heart was a storm. The sign was small, almost unremarkable. Wasatch Family Care. A place that looked too ordinary to hold the ghosts of her past. She didn't go inside. She couldn't. Not yet. Instead, she crossed the street to a park bench opposite the entrance. The air smelled faintly of pine and cold metal. Parents walked with toddlers, a boy tossed snowballs at a fence. And then, through the glass doors, she saw him. Elijah. He stepped out slowly, shoulders hunched against the chill. A thin scarf was wrapped around his neck, his breath clouding the air. His movements were deliberate, measured. But his face was the same one she'd loved in another life. Two girls followed him, laughing about something she couldn't hear. Leah had snow stuck in her braid. Ava was holding a small sketchbook, showing him a drawing. Her fingers dug into her gloves. Elijah turned slightly, glancing across the street. His gaze brushed over her without recognition, but it was enough. She saw the faint tremor in his left hand as he reached for Leah's mitten. The smallest movement, and it undid everything. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Cameron again. "Are you sure about this?" Olivia stared at the clinic, at the family that had once been hers. Then she typed back, her fingers shaking. "No, but I'm here anyway." When she looked up again, Elijah and the girls were gone, swallowed by the white afternoon. And for the first time in years, Olivia Langston cried. Not for what she'd lost, but for what she'd finally dared to face. The next morning, Olivia parked across the street from the school where Elijah taught. It was the first time she'd ever been early for something that wasn't a board meeting. She wasn't sure what she was hoping for, to see him in motion, to prove to herself that he still existed outside her guilt. Snow drifted down in slow, hesitant spirals. Through the window, she could see him at the piano in the music room. His class of middle schoolers sang in uneven voices, laughing when they missed their notes. Elijah smiled, patient, his gestures soft but deliberate. When one of the students grew frustrated, he leaned down and said something that made the whole room relax. Olivia sat in her car and watched. Every small motion, the tap of his foot, the tilt of his head, was a memory returning to her body. She remembered how he used to hum under his breath while brushing his teeth, or how he'd rest his fingers on her wrist when he was thinking through a melody. The man inside that classroom was still him, and yet so far away. When the bell rang, the kids poured out into the hallways, their laughter echoing. Elijah lingered by the piano, rubbing his right wrist before gathering his notes. His hand shook slightly, the tremor visible even from here. It was one thing to read a diagnosis on paper. It was another to see it happening to him. Her phone buzzed in her lap. Cameron's name flashed on the screen. "Don't tell me you're still there," Cameron said. "I'm not sure where else I'd go." "You've been sitting in that car for hours," Cameron said. "If you're not ready to talk to him, at least go back to the hotel. Get some rest." "I can't rest," Olivia said. "Not yet." There was a pause. "He doesn't know you're there, does he?" "No," Cameron sighed. "Then this isn't a reunion. It's surveillance. You're better than this." Olivia looked back toward the window. Elijah was gone. Only the piano remained, silent and waiting. "I used to think being better meant being stronger," she said. "Maybe it just means showing up for once." She hung up before Cameron could answer. That afternoon, she walked to the clinic again. The cold burned her cheeks, and her heels weren't made for ice. But she didn't care. She was done hiding behind glass. Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and paper. A receptionist smiled politely. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Elijah Ford," Olivia said, keeping her tone even. The woman flipped through a few papers. "He's not scheduled for an appointment today, ma'am. Are you family?" Olivia hesitated. "Not anymore," she said quietly. She turned to leave, and there he was, stepping through the side door. For a second, neither of them moved. Time compressed into a heartbeat, the distance between them a fragile thing. Elijah stopped in the hallway, eyes narrowing in disbelief. "Olivia." Her throat went dry. "Hi," she managed. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see you," she said, then quickly added, "and the girls." "The girls," he repeated. His voice was flat, unreadable. "You saw them at the airport?" "Yes." She tried to meet his eyes. "I didn't plan it. It just happened." He nodded once, slow. "And now?" "I thought maybe—" She swallowed. "Maybe we could talk." He exhaled, the sound a tired laugh. "Talk. After 6 years. I know how that sounds. I don't think you do." He turned as if to leave, but she stepped forward. "Please," she said. "Just 5 minutes." Elijah hesitated. The tremor in his hand was more pronounced now. He tucked it into his pocket, as if to hide it. Finally, he said, "Outside." They walked to the park across the street. Snow covered the benches in uneven layers. Elijah sat carefully, wincing as his joints protested. Olivia stayed standing, her gloves clenched tight. "You shouldn't be here," he said without looking at her. "Maybe not," she admitted, "but I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see you." He turned his head slightly. "You saw me years ago, Olivia. You just kept walking." The words hit her like a slap. "I was sick," she said softly. "After the twins were born, I wasn't myself. I was scared all the time, hearing things, seeing things. I thought leaving was the only way to keep them safe." He closed his eyes for a moment. "You could have told me. I didn't know how." He gave a small, bitter laugh. "That's the thing about you. You always choose control over confession." She flinched. "You're right. I did. And I paid for it every day since." The wind picked up, scattering snow from the trees. "Elijah," she said quietly, "I know I don't deserve a second chance. I just want to know if you'll let me see them, even for a minute." He stared at her, his face unreadable. "You don't just get to walk back into their lives because you've decided you're ready." "I'm not asking to erase the past," she said, "just to be part of their present." Elijah looked down at his gloved hands, flexing his fingers. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "They don't remember much," he said. "Leah asks sometimes. Ava doesn't. I think that's her way of protecting herself." Olivia's chest tightened. "I don't expect them to forgive me." "Good," he said, "because forgiveness isn't what they need. Consistency is." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Then let me try." Elijah sighed. For the first time, his eyes softened. "There's an ice rink near Liberty Park," he said. "Thursday morning, before school. We go every week." She blinked. "You're inviting me." "I'm not," he said. "I'm giving you a chance to show up. Don't make it worse by not coming." He stood, brushing the snow from his coat. "If you're serious, be there. If not, go back to your jets and headlines. We'll manage like we always have." He started to walk away. "Elijah," she called after him. He paused. "I'm sorry," she said. He didn't turn around. "Then prove it," he said, and disappeared down the path, leaving her alone in the falling snow. Olivia stood there until her hands went numb. For the first time in 6 years, she had a destination that wasn't tied to money, ambition, or escape. Thursday, the rink. And this time, she wouldn't run. Thursday morning came too fast, carrying with it the kind of cold that bit through even Olivia's tailored coat. She arrived early at the rink, the air sharp with frost and the faint smell of hot cocoa from the vending machine inside. The place was quiet, just the scrape of skates on ice, the hum of a Zamboni finishing its rounds, and the low chatter of parents trying to wake up before work. She hadn't been on ice in over a decade. The last time had been with Elijah. Christmas Eve, a tiny rink in Brooklyn, laughter echoing between them as snow fell through the open roof. He'd spun her until they both collapsed, breathless, her hands tangled in his scarf. That memory felt like another lifetime now, like someone else's story. The door opened behind her. Elijah stepped in, followed by the twins. Leah's cheeks were already pink from the cold, her hair in a loose braid. Ava carried her skates, expression cautious and distant. Elijah's movements were slower, deliberate, but he smiled when Leah tugged his arm toward the benches. "Hey," he said to Olivia, voice neutral but not cold. "Hi," she replied. "I wasn't sure if you'd really come." "I wasn't sure if you would." The girls didn't seem to notice the tension between them. Leah pointed toward the ice. "Come on, Dad. We're going to be late for fun." "Fun doesn't start until I've had coffee," he said dryly. Leah grinned. "That's what Mom used to say." The word Mom hung in the air like a spark that hadn't decided whether to burn or fade. Elijah froze just for a heartbeat, and so did Olivia. Ava glanced between them, eyes sharp with understanding. Leah, oblivious, tugged her skates on and ran to the rink. Olivia watched her go, heart tight. "She doesn't remember much," she said quietly. "Maybe not consciously," Elijah said, sitting down to lace his own skates. "But some things stick." When he was done, he handed Olivia a spare pair. "If you're staying, you might as well try." She blinked. "I haven't skated in years." "Then you'll fit right in with the 6-year-olds. Despite herself, she smiled. "Still funny," he shrugged. "It's cheaper than therapy." She sat beside him and pulled the skates on, her hands clumsy with unfamiliarity. Elijah rose first, his balance steady but deliberate, his right leg stiffening slightly. Leah was already skating in loose circles, carefree and wild. Ava lingered by the edge, her posture perfect, her movements restrained. Olivia took her first step onto the ice and immediately regretted it. Her left foot slipped, sending her wobbling forward. She grabbed the railing, laughing breathlessly. "That could have been catastrophic." Leah giggled from across the rink. "You look like a baby giraffe." Ava rolled her eyes. "She's fine." "I'll take fine," Olivia said, inching forward. The ice squeaked beneath her blades. Slowly, cautiously, she found a rhythm. Elijah passed by her, gliding with quiet confidence. The girls followed, and soon she was caught in their orbit, a clumsy constellation, trying to remember how to move together. After a few laps, Leah zipped up beside her. "You're doing better," she said proudly. "I have an excellent teacher." "That's me, right?" "Obviously." Leah's grin widened. She skated ahead, looping around Ava, who was pretending not to watch. Olivia risked a glance at Elijah. He was slower now, his hand occasionally brushing the rail, but his expression was content. For a moment, she saw the man she had married, not the teacher, not the patient, but the musician who could make a room fall silent with one note. After 40 minutes, the girls begged for hot cocoa. Elijah led them to the small cafe corner near the rink. They crowded around a table, the air thick with steam and sugar. Leah dunked a marshmallow into her cup, while Ava scribbled something in a small notebook. Olivia wrapped her hands around her drink, trying to steady the tremor in them. Elijah leaned back, watching her. "So, why now?" The question was soft but loaded. She didn't look away. "Because I finally realized I can't buy forgiveness or time." He said nothing, waiting. "When the girls were born," she continued, her voice breaking, "I thought something inside me had cracked open. I couldn't sleep. I heard things that weren't there. I thought if I stayed, I'd hurt them." She blinked hard. "I didn't even understand it was an illness. I thought it was me. So I left before I became someone worse." Elijah's eyes softened, but his face remained still. "You could have told me." "I didn't know how. Every word felt like an admission I couldn't make." He exhaled, looking down at his hands. "I spent months wondering what I did wrong. I'd go over every argument, every silence, trying to find the reason." "You did nothing wrong," she said. "You and the girls were the only good things I had. That's what made it unbearable." Leah interrupted, grinning. "Dad, you have cocoa on your nose." He wiped it away, smiling, the moment between them dissolving into laughter. Ava rolled her eyes but smiled too. Olivia felt something shift, small, quiet, but real. When the girls ran off to look at the pro shop window, Elijah turned back to her. "I can't just forget, Liv. but maybe I can listen. That's all I'm asking, she said. He nodded slowly. We'll see. Outside, the morning sun was melting the edges of the snow, water trickling down the glass. The girls pressed their faces to the window, their laughter spilling across the cafe. For the first time in years, Olivia didn't feel like a visitor in her own life. She felt like someone trying to return home. When Elijah stood, she reached for his empty cup before he could. Let me, she said. He hesitated, then let go. His hand trembled once, briefly before retreating into his pocket. You'll be here next week? He asked. I will, she said. Every week if you'll let me. He gave her a small, cautious smile. Then maybe we'll start there. The next Thursday arrived wrapped in sunlight instead of snow, but the air still held that thin Utah chill that made every breath visible. Olivia arrived at the rink with 2 cups of coffee, one for herself, one for Elijah. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was the kind of gesture that said, I remember what you like. He was already there, helping Leah tie her skates while Ava read on the bench. The scene was painfully ordinary, the kind of moment she'd spent years pretending she didn't miss. I thought you hated being early, Elijah said as she approached. I'm learning new habits. She handed him the cup. 1 cream, 2 sugars. He arched a brow but accepted it. Careful, you're starting to sound like you pay attention. Leah looked up with a grin. She's trying to be nice, Dad. Ava's voice came from behind her book. Trying doesn't mean succeeding. Olivia laughed, the sound surprising her. I'll take it as a challenge. When they hit the ice, Olivia was steadier this time. Her body remembered the rhythm, though her pride still bruised easily. Leah zipped past her in spinning circles while Ava glided along the far edge, graceful and focused. Elijah watched from the side, occasionally shouting gentle corrections, like a coach who'd long since accepted chaos as part of the job. You're improving, he said when she stopped beside him to catch her breath. I'm still a liability, she replied. I think I've nearly taken out 3 kids and a pensioner. He chuckled. Progress, then. Leah skated toward them, cheeks flushed. Dad, come on. Not today, he said. His smile flickered. Legs stiff. Olivia noticed it before, the way he subtly shifted his weight, hiding the tremor in his right hand. But this time, it was worse. His fingers twitched even when resting against the railing. You okay? She asked quietly. He didn't answer at first. Just tired. The girls were already off again, laughing. Olivia lowered her voice. Is it getting worse? He looked at her then, the mask slipping for just a moment. It doesn't get better, Liv. Something inside her ached. You don't have to go through it alone. He offered her a small, bittersweet smile. That's not your burden anymore. Maybe not, she said, but it's still my choice. He looked away, eyes fixed on the twins, as if the sight of them could hold the world together. Don't make promises you can't keep. Then I won't, she said. I'll just keep showing up until it counts. He didn't answer, but his silence felt less like resistance and more like consideration. When practice ended, Leah's braid had come undone again, a tangle of golden strands escaping her hat. She plopped down beside Olivia on the bench. Can you fix it? Olivia froze for a second, startled by the casual trust in her tone. I can try. Her fingers fumbled at first. It had been years since she'd done something so simple, so intimate. The hair slipped through her gloves, soft and warm. She started again, slower this time, weaving the strands carefully. Not too tight, Leah instructed. Dad always makes it hurt. I'll be gentle. Ava appeared holding a purple elastic from her wrist. She didn't speak, just handed it over. Olivia met her gaze briefly, and Ava didn't look away this time. Thanks, Olivia said softly. It's for the braid, not you, Ava said, but her tone lacked its usual sharpness. Olivia smiled. Of course. When she finished, Leah turned around to inspect her reflection in the plexiglass. It's good, she declared. Not Dad good, but almost. I'll take almost. Leah nodded decisively. You're learning. Then she grabbed Ava's hand and dragged her toward the snack bar. Olivia watched them go, her chest full and aching. They're incredible, she said quietly. Elijah leaned against the wall beside her. They are. For a while they just stood there listening to the twins' laughter echo across the rink. Then he said, They used to ask about you more when they were little. Leah would draw pictures of you, Ava would hide them. Olivia's throat tightened. I don't deserve that kind of grace. No one does, he said simply, but sometimes we get it anyway. She looked at him, really looked at him. The tired lines around his mouth, the tremor in his hand, the quiet strength that had carried their children through every day she'd missed. You're not angry anymore, are you? He thought about it. I was, for a long time, but anger's heavy. You can't raise kids with that much weight in your hands. She nodded, unable to speak. They left together, the girl skipping ahead through the snow, Ava pretending not to skip but doing it anyway. The sun caught in Leah's braid, and for a fleeting second, everything felt exactly as it should be. That night, Olivia sat by the hotel window, watching the city lights flicker through falling snow. Her phone buzzed. A message from Elijah. Thank you for today. They slept smiling. She stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. They make it easy to love them. A pause, then another message. You always did. You just forgot how. Her eyes burned. She typed one more line. Then I'll spend the rest of my life remembering. She didn't expect a reply and didn't need one. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, living, waiting. For the first time in 6 years, Olivia set her phone down and didn't feel the need to run. She sat there watching the snow fall over Salt Lake City and let herself believe that redemption could arrive quietly, disguised as routine. Tomorrow, she thought, she'd bring hot cocoa for the girls, maybe a scarf for Elijah. Maybe she'd just bring herself. It was enough. By the time February came, the rhythm of Olivia's visits had become part of the family's unspoken routine. Thursdays meant skating and cocoa. Saturdays meant errands she pretended were coincidences. Showing up at the market Elijah frequented, stopping by the park when the girls had lessons. Nobody said the word home, but it was starting to sound less foreign. The girls had stopped asking if she would come. They just assumed she would. That small shift was more forgiveness than words could offer. One evening, Olivia found herself in their kitchen for the first time since the day she'd left. The air smelled of cinnamon and detergent. The girls were sprawled on the floor drawing, Leah with bursts of color, Ava sketching in clean, deliberate lines. Elijah sat nearby with a mug of tea, his laptop open but mostly ignored. When Olivia set the grocery bags on the counter, Leah popped up immediately. You got the right cocoa this time, she said, triumphant. I'm learning your ways, Olivia said, smiling. Ava peered up from her drawing. You should label the mugs next time. Dad always forgets which one's his. Only because someone keeps switching them, Elijah said. Leah giggled. That's called family sabotage. Olivia laughed softly. It was the kind of laughter that came from safety, not distance. She began unpacking the groceries, placing each item in the right cabinet. She didn't need to ask where things went anymore. When the girls wandered off to the living room, Elijah leaned back in his chair. You moved through this house like you never left, he said. I'm trying not to make it feel like I'm invading. He smiled faintly. You're not anymore. The words landed in her chest like warmth. Still, the tremor in his right hand caught her eye. It had grown worse these last few weeks, the motions smaller but harder to control. She tried not to look worried, but he noticed anyway. It's fine, he said before she could ask. It doesn't look fine. He chuckled softly. I have good days and bad ones. Today's somewhere in the middle. Does it hurt? Not yet. He flexed his fingers, watching them shake. It's more frustrating than painful. Like my body's forgetting the things I taught it. Olivia sat across from him. Then I'll remember them for you. He looked up, caught off guard by the conviction in her voice. Liv, I mean it. Silence settled between them. Not awkward, not heavy, just full. The next week, Leah came home waving a permission slip. Story day. Everyone's parents are coming to read to our class. You should come, Mom. The word still startled Olivia every time, but Leah said it so easily, like breathing. I'd love to, she said, glancing at Elijah. Ava shrugged. It's optional. Then it's settled, Leah said. Mom's reading. At the kitchen table that night, Olivia stared at the blank page in front of her. She could have chosen any book, something safe, light, but none of them felt right. So she began to write instead. The story that emerged was about a fox who left her den when the forest grew too loud inside her head. She wandered for seasons, convinced she'd lost everything. When she finally returned, the forest didn't recognize her, but her cubs did. They sniffed her paws, circled her once, then opened their small den without a word. She titled it, "The Fox Who Found Her Way Back." The classroom smelled of glue and crayons. Olivia stood at the front, heart racing, paper trembling slightly in her hand. Leah sat cross-legged on the rug, grinning proudly. Ava pretended to be uninterested but didn't look away. When Olivia began reading, her voice shook on the first line. By the third paragraph, it steadied. The children listened quietly, their eyes wide. And when she reached the ending, where the fox finally stayed, she realized her voice had softened, like the story was reading her instead. When she finished, the teacher clapped gently. "That was beautiful, Mrs. Langston." Leah beamed. Ava, still pretending indifference, whispered, "You didn't even stumble once." "Thank you," Olivia said. "I practiced." Outside, after the class dispersed, Ava lingered by the steps. "That story wasn't really about a fox, was it?" Olivia smiled. "Not entirely." Ava's expression flickered between suspicion and understanding. "She left because she thought it was safer for them." "Yes. And she came back when she realized they were safer with her." Olivia's throat tightened. "Exactly." Ava's eyes softened. "Leah thinks you came back because you missed us. I think you came back because Dad needed you. I came back because I needed all of you," Olivia said quietly. For the first time, Ava reached out and took her hand, not tentatively, but like a choice. That night, after the girls fell asleep, Elijah sat at the piano. Olivia joined him, the faint glow of the lamp wrapping them in gold. The unfinished lullaby still sat on the stand, notes scattered across the page. "You never did finish this," she said. "I couldn't," he replied. "The melody broke where your name should have been." She smiled faintly. "Then let's finish it now." She sat beside him, and together they played, slowly at first, fumbling for rhythm. Her hands remembered what his forgot. He found the harmony where she found the strength. The melody wove between them, old pain unraveling into something whole. When they struck the final chord, the sound hung in the air like breath on glass, fragile, fading, but alive. Elijah leaned back, closing his eyes. "That's what it was missing," he murmured. "The staying." Olivia touched his shoulder gently. "We can make that our new refrain." Outside, the snow had melted into thin rivers of light, and the first signs of spring tapped softly against the window. For the first time, she didn't wonder how long this peace would last. She just breathed it in, steady, certain, and real. Spring arrived like an exhale the world had been holding. The snow withdrew into the gutters, the air smelled faintly of wet earth, and sunlight spilled through the kitchen window where Olivia stood whisking eggs. It had been 6 months since that first unexpected message. 6 months since she'd traded flight schedules for school drop-offs and quarterly reports for piano recitals. The rhythm of their days had softened. Mornings were loud, Leah singing off-key, Ava reminding everyone of forgotten homework, Elijah teasing that Olivia's coffee was half syrup. But they were real. Each laugh, each shared silence, was proof that the gap between them had turned from a wound into a scar. Something that still existed, but no longer bled. Elijah sat at the table, sorting through sheet music, his left hand steady while the right twitched occasionally. The tremor had worsened slightly. He masked it with humor, but Olivia noticed everything. "You're up early," he said, glancing toward her. "I promised pancakes. You promised yesterday, too." "I'm learning to deliver on promises," she said, sliding a plate toward him. He smiled, faint but warm. "So you are." The girls thundered down the stairs, arguing over who got the first batch. Leah grabbed the spatula from Olivia's hand, insisting she could flip them better. Ava rolled her eyes, took over the syrup, and by some miracle, breakfast became an orchestra of noise that Elijah conducted without saying a word. Later, when the girls ran out to the backyard to chase each other through the thawed grass, Elijah poured himself another cup of coffee. "They're good together," he said. "They've always been good," Olivia replied. "I was just too far away to see it." He nodded, his gaze drifting toward the window. "You're here now. That's what matters." The quiet stretched between them, easy, familiar. And then he winced. It was small, barely noticeable. But Olivia caught it instantly. His hand froze mid-air, coffee sloshing slightly. Elijah? He set the cup down carefully. Just a cramp, he said, forcing a smile. Happens sometimes. Does it hurt? He shook his head, but his jaw tightened. Don't look at me like that, Liv. I'm not broken. She wanted to argue, but didn't. Instead, she took his mug, refilled it, and placed it in front of him again. Then let me help when it does. He exhaled, half sigh, half surrender. You already do. The following week, the school announced an end-of-year showcase. The twins were both performing, Leah in a choral piece, Ava on violin. Elijah had been asked to play piano for the final number, a small ensemble written by the students. He said yes without hesitation, but Olivia noticed the fear behind his confidence. That night, after the girls were asleep, she found him at the piano. His fingers stumbled more than they used to. The melody faltered, then recovered. You should rest, she said softly from the doorway. He didn't turn around. If I stop, I'll forget. You won't. She crossed the room and sat beside him. Let me help. He hesitated. I don't want your pity. This isn't pity. It's partnership. He smiled at that. Slow, tired, genuine. You always did talk like a contract lawyer. Occupational hazard. He started playing again, and she joined him, matching his pace. Where his fingers trembled, hers steadied the rhythm. Together they built the melody back into something alive. The lullaby they'd finished weeks before bled seamlessly into the new song, a bridge between what had been and what was coming. When the last note faded, Elijah leaned back, closing his eyes. You're good for me, he murmured. You're better for me, she said quietly. Showcase night arrived beneath strings of paper lanterns that swayed gently over the school courtyard. Parents filled folding chairs, chatting in low excitement. The air hummed with warmth and the first hints of summer. Olivia sat in the front row with her camera. Leah was first to perform, her bright voice carrying over the crowd, sweet and fearless. Ava followed with her violin solo, measured, precise, beautiful. Olivia clutched Elijah's hand during both performances, though neither mentioned it. When the final act began, the spotlight found Elijah at the piano. His posture was calm, his face composed, but she saw the small tremor ripple through his right arm. Then he started to play. The first few notes were shaky, uncertain, but then something shifted. The music grew stronger, warmer. The students followed his lead, and the melody filled the night, carrying every struggle and every joy they'd all survived. When it ended, applause erupted. The girls ran to him first, Leah wrapping her arms around his waist, Ava squeezing his shoulder. Olivia approached last. You were brilliant, she said, her voice thick. He smiled. I didn't fall off the bench. I'll take that as a win. You were more than that, she whispered. He looked at her, eyes shining under the lights. We all were. Back home, the girls fell asleep almost instantly, their medals still hanging around their necks. Olivia tucked them in, brushed a stray curl from Leah's face, then went downstairs. Elijah was already on the couch, the tremor worse now that the adrenaline had faded. She sat beside him, her hand covering his. Tell me what you need. Stay, he said simply. I will. No matter how bad it gets? No matter what, she said. You don't have to ask again. He leaned his head back, eyes closed, breathing slow. I used to think the hardest part of love was holding on, he murmured. Turns out it's learning to accept when someone actually does. Olivia squeezed his hand. Then let me prove I've learned. He smiled faintly. You already have. Outside, the night was warm, and somewhere upstairs the wind rustled through paper ribbons the twins had hung on the window. One word written across both. Together. For the first time in years, Olivia didn't feel like she was borrowing time. She felt like she was finally living inside it. By summer, the house had learned to breathe again. Windows stayed open, the scent of lilacs drifting through the hallways. The girls' laughter carried from the yard, blending with the sound of Elijah's piano, a melody that had become as familiar to Olivia as her own heartbeat. Some nights when the light lingered late, she'd find him there, his left hand anchoring the song while his right faltered, stubbornly pushing through each tremor. He refused to let the silence win. On one of those evenings, she stood in the doorway, barefoot, hair loose, watching him play. He noticed her before she could slip away. "You're hovering," he said, his voice quiet but teasing. "Admiring," she corrected. "Big difference." He smiled without looking up. "You always had a flattering definition of observation." She crossed the room and sat beside him. "Someone has to keep you honest." He stopped mid-note, his hand trembling over the keys. "And what if I can't play much longer?" She turned to him. "Then we'll find another instrument." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You make it sound so easy." "It isn't," she said, "but neither was coming back. And I did that anyway." He exhaled, leaning back. "You always were the brave one." "That's not bravery," she said. "It's debt. I owed you all this time." He met her eyes, something unspoken passing between them. "Then consider it paid," he said, and reached over to press a trembling note that melted into the evening air. Later that week, Olivia volunteered at the girls' school for a summer arts fair. It was a chaotic, wonderful mess. Paint-splattered tables, students in paper crowns, parents juggling lemonade cups. She helped the twins set up their booth. Ava's carefully sketched cityscapes beside Leah's bright, messy explosions of color. Leah tugged on her sleeve. "Can Dad come later?" "He'll try," Olivia said. "But his hands are—" "I know," Leah interrupted, frowning. "He can still clap, though." Olivia smiled. "That's true." Ava looked up from arranging her drawings. "He'll come," she said, as if daring anyone to disagree. When Elijah arrived halfway through the fair, cane tapping lightly against the pavement, the girls ran to meet him. His pace was slower now, but his smile was the same. He made it to their booth, admiring every drawing like each one was a masterpiece. "These are incredible," he said. "I can't tell whose is whose anymore." "That's because you're supposed to guess," Leah said, crossing her arms. "It's a test." "Then I already failed," he replied, pretending to sigh. "Guess I'll have to study harder." Olivia laughed. For a moment, the world tilted back into something that felt like happiness. But later, as the fair wound down, she saw him sitting on a bench near the edge of the playground, his cane on the ground, his hands shaking visibly. She went to him, crouching down beside the bench. "Elijah," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Guess my hands decided they've had enough celebration." Her throat tightened. "Let's get you home." "Give me a minute," he said, looking toward the setting sun where the twins were still laughing under a sprinkler, their clothes soaked, faces glowing. "I want to remember this exactly as it is." She sat beside him without speaking. The sun slid lower, gilding the edges of everything it touched. The girls, the trees, Elijah's trembling hands. When she finally slipped her fingers into his, he didn't pull away. That night the air felt too still. The girls were asleep upstairs, the soft hum of their breathing drifting through the quiet. Olivia sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Elijah to come down from his study. But when she heard the thud, small but wrong, she was moving before she knew it. "Elijah!" She found him on the floor beside the stairs, one hand braced against the wall, his breathing shallow. His cane had rolled across the floor. "I'm fine," he gasped. "Just dizzy." "You're not fine," she said, kneeling beside him. He tried to sit up, but his strength betrayed him. "Liv, it's just a flare-up." "Stop talking," she said, gripping his hand. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No," he said weakly. "The girls, don't scare them." Her voice trembled. "They'll be more scared if you don't wake up tomorrow." He sighed, a sound half frustration, half surrender. "You always win." She brushed a tear from her cheek. "I've been losing for years, Elijah. Let me win this one." By the time the paramedics arrived, he was pale but conscious. Olivia rode with him, the sirens a distant echo of her heartbeat. At the hospital, monitors beeped softly around them, sterile light washing the color from his skin. The doctor spoke gently. Dehydration, muscle exhaustion, early signs of respiratory strain. "He'll need rest," she said, "and support." Olivia nodded. "He has both." When they were alone, Elijah looked at her through half-lidded eyes. "I told you I didn't want to scare them." "They'll understand," she whispered. "They're your daughters. They're stronger than they look." He smiled faintly. "They're yours too, Liv. Don't forget that." She stayed with him until dawn, holding his hand as machines hummed in the background. When he finally drifted into sleep, she whispered the words she'd never said out loud. Not 6 years ago, not even now, until it was almost too late. I'm not leaving again, she said. Not for anything. Outside the window, morning crept over the horizon. The city stirred awake, unaware that inside one small hospital room, a family was learning the cost of love and the grace of staying. By the time Elijah was discharged 2 days later, the girls had turned the house into a celebration. Streamers, hand-drawn signs, a crooked cake with too much frosting. Ava handed him a card that read, "Welcome home, even though you never really left." Leah hugged him so tightly his cane nearly toppled. Olivia stood in the doorway watching, her heart swollen with gratitude and fear, and something deeper, peace. Elijah looked up at her, smiling. "Told you I'd make it back." She crossed the room, took his hand, and said, "This time, we're all staying." The house had never been quieter. Even the floorboards seemed to breathe more softly, careful not to wake Elijah. After the hospital scare, every sound felt amplified. The clink of dishes, the creak of the stairs, the whisper of wind through open windows. Olivia had started measuring her life by those quiet intervals between his breaths. It had been 3 weeks since he came home, and each day was a fragile balance. Some mornings he was bright and alert, joking with the girls over breakfast. Other days he stayed in bed, conserving his energy while pretending to nap. Olivia had learned the pattern of his strength, when to hover, when to let him pretend he didn't need help. On one of his good days, Elijah sat by the window with a blanket across his knees. The late summer light cast everything in gold. The twins sprawled on the rug nearby, Ava sketching sheet music, Leah cutting colored paper into shapes. Olivia stood in the kitchen doorway, watching them. For the first time in years, the picture looked whole. When Elijah noticed her, he motioned her over. "You're staring," he said softly. "I'm remembering." "Anything good?" "All of it," she said. "Even the parts that hurt." He smiled faintly. "That's progress." She sat beside him. "The girls are writing something for you." "I figured. They've been whispering about it like spies." Leah looked up from the floor. "It's a song," she announced proudly. "Dad's song." Elijah chuckled. "That's not very subtle, Leah." Ava shrugged. "The title's a work in progress." "You should hear it," Leah said. "It's happy and sad, like you." "That sounds about right," he said. "Who's playing it?" "You, of course," Leah said innocently. Elijah raised a brow. "We might have to negotiate that part." The room filled with laughter, light, genuine, unforced. Olivia joined in, even as she felt her chest tighten at the thought that every shared laugh was a countdown to fewer. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, she found Elijah at the piano. The tremor in his right hand was stronger than before. Still, he played, each note deliberate and slow. "You should be resting," she said quietly, moving closer. He didn't stop. "I can't. Not yet." "Because of their song?" He nodded. "I want to finish it. For them. For us." She sat on the bench beside him. "Then let me help." He hesitated, then shifted slightly to make room. She reached out, laying her hands over the lower keys. He guided her through the melody, humming softly as the music took shape. It was simple, tender, threaded with hope and sorrow in equal measure. When they reached the final chord, he let it linger. "That's it," he whispered. "That's the bridge." Olivia swallowed hard. "It's beautiful." "It's goodbye," he said, his voice barely audible. She turned to him sharply. "Don't say that." He smiled sadly. "Not the kind you think, just a song that says I'll always be here, even when I'm not." Her throat burned. "You're not allowed to make peace with leaving before I am." "I made peace a long time ago," he said. "I just didn't know it until now." Tears stung her eyes, but she forced a smile. "Then I guess I'll just have to hold on tighter." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You already do." Days passed in a blur of ordinary moments made sacred by their fragility. Leah kept bringing him her drawings, portraits of the family, always with 4 figures. Ava started humming constantly, fragments of melodies drifting through the house. One evening, Olivia came home from running errands to find the twins sitting at the kitchen table, their notebooks open, Elijah between them. They were rehearsing the new song. Leah spotted her first. "Mom, we're almost done." Olivia froze at the word, still so new, so weighty. I can see that. Ava looked up from the page. He's teaching us the chords so we can play when he can't. Elijah gave a soft laugh. She's very diplomatic. You're serious about this, Olivia said quietly. It's theirs now, he said. I just borrowed it long enough to get them started. Ava played a few tentative notes. The sound filled the small kitchen like a memory already forming. Olivia leaned against the counter, her heart caught somewhere between pride and grief. When the girls went to bed later, she stayed behind with him, cleaning up the scattered sheets of music. You shouldn't push yourself this hard, she said. He reached for her hand. Liv, if you knew how many years I wasted being angry, you'd understand why I don't want to waste what's left. She squeezed his hand gently. You didn't waste them. You raised them. You survived. You waited for me. He smiled faintly. And you came back. That's one promise I kept. He studied her for a moment, his eyes soft with something beyond gratitude. Do you know what I see when I look at you now? What? The life we were supposed to have, he said. And somehow, we still got it. She couldn't answer. She just leaned in and pressed her forehead to his. For a long time, they sat in silence. The only sound the faint ticking of the clock and the steady rhythm of his breath. A week later, the girls insisted on performing their song in the park, where Elijah had once taken them skating. It was a warm evening, the mountains fading into gold behind them. A small crowd gathered, neighbors, classmates, teachers who adored him. Ava began on violin, Leah following with her small keyboard. Their melody wove through the air, pure and unguarded. When the final chord faded, Elijah clapped softly, pride shining through exhaustion. They did it, Olivia whispered. He nodded. They did more than that. They gave me a reason to stay as long as I could. The crowd applauded. Leah ran to him, laughing, her hair shining in the last light of day. Ava followed, quieter but smiling. Olivia stood beside him, her hand finding his. The evening breeze lifted through the park, carrying their music with it. And for the first time, Elijah didn't look like a man fighting the inevitable. He looked like someone at peace, with his family, with the past, with the time he still had left. When the girls turned to wave at the crowd, Olivia whispered to him, "They're yours." He looked at her, his eyes clear and bright. "Ours," he corrected. Finally. Autumn came quietly that year. The trees along the parkway turned slow shades of copper and gold, and the air carried the scent of wood smoke and rain. Olivia had always thought of fall as an ending, a time of shedding, of closure. But this one felt different. It felt like keeping. Elijah's health had leveled into something steady but fragile. He tired more easily now and used the cane full time, yet his spirit seemed lighter. The anger, the guilt, the unspoken things between them had been replaced by something gentler, something that didn't need to be named. One morning she found him on the porch wrapped in a blanket, a notebook resting on his lap. The girls were at school and the house was still. "Working on something?" she asked, stepping outside with 2 mugs of tea. He smiled. "Always. I'm editing the lyrics for the twins' song. They're performing it at the winter recital." Olivia sat beside him, pulling her sweater tighter. "You trust them to handle your masterpiece?" "They've already improved it," he said, chuckling. Leah added a verse about marshmallows. Ava made it rhyme. "That sounds very collaborative." He looked out toward the trees. "They'll remember this part, Liv. Not the money, not the house, not the headlines, just the music and the laughter and the nights when we stayed." She took his hand. "Then we did something right." He squeezed her fingers, his touch faint but warm. "We did something real." Weeks passed. The recital loomed closer, and the girls rehearsed until the melody seeped into every corner of the house. Olivia filmed them in secret, Ava frowning in concentration, Leah dancing mid-song. The recordings felt like pieces of a memory she never wanted to lose. On the morning of the performance, Elijah insisted on wearing his best suit. "You'd think I was accepting an award," he joked, fumbling with his tie. "You kind of are," she said, helping him fix it. "The Lifetime Achievement Award for surviving us?" He laughed softly. "I'll accept that." The auditorium was packed, parents chatting, cameras flashing. Olivia guided him to a front row seat, close enough to see every detail. The lights dimmed. When the twins stepped on stage, the crowd quieted. Leah adjusted the microphone. Ava raised her violin. "This is for our dad," Leah said, her voice trembling just slightly, "and for everyone who's ever found their way home." Olivia's throat closed. Elijah sat perfectly still, eyes locked on his daughter's. The music began, soft, familiar, stitched together from all their fragments. The melody of the lullaby they'd once written, reshaped by two young hands. Leah sang the words they'd added. "We waited in silence. We built our sky with fear. You lit the windows, and we found you here." Ava's violin carried the final line, its sound thin and beautiful. When the last note faded, the room erupted in applause. Leah grinned through tears. Ava bowed quickly, embarrassed by emotion. Olivia glanced at Elijah. He wasn't clapping. He was just watching, a smile resting on his face, eyes glistening with pride, and something deeper, almost serene. When the applause subsided, he whispered, "That's the sound of staying." She didn't speak. She just took his hand. Later, back at the house, the twins collapsed on the couch, still in their recital clothes, basking in the glow of victory. Olivia tucked a blanket around them and found Elijah in the study, seated at the piano. "You shouldn't be moving around this much," she said gently. He smiled. "Just one last song." He gestured for her to sit beside him. His right hand hovered uncertainly above the keys. She laid hers over his. Together they pressed the first chord. The sound was uneven but true. "I want you to promise me something," he said quietly. "Anything. When I can't play anymore, you'll keep the piano out. Don't let them put it away. Let it wait." "It will," she whispered. "It'll always wait." He nodded, his breathing slowing. "Good." They played one more verse, slow, halting, heartbreakingly beautiful. When the final note faded, the silence felt sacred. Elijah leaned back, eyes closing. "That's enough for me." She brushed his cheek. "Rest then." "I am," he murmured, and his hand stilled in hers. The funeral was small, just family, a few close friends, and colleagues who'd known the man behind the music. The twins clung to each other, their song playing softly in the background, a recording from the recital. After the service, Olivia stayed behind, sitting on the bench beside the piano. The church was empty now, sunlight pouring through the stained glass. She pressed one key, then another. The sound echoed softly. Ava appeared in the doorway, holding Leah's hand. "Can we play with you?" Olivia nodded. The girls joined her, their small fingers finding familiar notes. The melody grew, fragile at first, then certain. When they finished, Leah whispered, "Do you think he heard us?" Olivia smiled through her tears. "He's been listening the whole time." Months later, the house was filled again, with laughter, with music, with life. Olivia had left her company behind, turning her focus to a small community foundation for children's arts. The piano still stood in its place by the window, polished and waiting. Every Saturday morning, the twins practiced. Sometimes they argued, sometimes they improvised, but always they played. On the anniversary of his passing, Olivia found a letter tucked inside the piano bench, a page of lyrics in Elijah's handwriting. The final verse of the song they'd written together, the melody stayed where the silence once grew. "I waited for love, and it led me to you." She traced the words with trembling fingers, then sat at the piano and began to play. The girls joined her one by one, their voices overlapping softly. And when the music filled the house again, it didn't sound like loss anymore. It sounded like a promise kept. Outside, autumn leaves fell slowly across the lawn, golden and light, like blessings finding their way home.